everyone. Welcome to FreeThinker's Fireside, where we put the human and humanist one cozy chat at a time. My name is Helen, also known as Hell's Bells. So I usually do this show on Thursday, but I know a lot of people. So now we're going to do Monday night shows and an occasional Saturday and maybe a Wednesday. I don't know. Just like and subscribe and you'll find out when there's an episode. So tonight I have my wonderful friend from the atheist community of Austin, Jimmy Jr. So let's say hi to Jimmy. Hi, Jimmy.
Hey, Helen. Hey. I'm so glad that you introduced me as your friend. I feel
my friend.
Of course. No, of course. I feel like so at home and so cozy right now. Like the fire background and like just hanging out with you. It's so accommodating. I love it.
Yeah, that's the vibe I'm going for. So yeah, this is just like I said, we usually we can talk about the whole topic and then sometimes we go off on tangents and talk about other shit. So
man, tangents is where we do our best work. And I know from working with you for the last 2 years that your tangents are amazing. So you just feel free.
Your tangents are amazing too, Jimmy.
I'm full of them.
It's like, oh no, I'm angry. Let me yell at something.
Yeah, the angry tangent is the best tangent. You never know where you'll end up.
Exactly. So for most people know you, but in our circle, but tell people who you are, what you do, a little bit about your activism, all that, tiny bit of your background, all that crap. Do the thing. Do the Shilling, man.
Yeah. Well, to say most people know who I am, that's a shocker. I don't know.
Okay, the atheist circles online. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, even so, if people know who I am, well, reach out to me. Let's work together. I'm a friendly guy, but no, I'm just kidding. I have come a long way, I think. At first when I started my activism, if you will, I really couldn't find my words. I couldn't find my message. It was hard to see myself on camera and like start talking. And now I'm so comfortable with it. I guess it just took a little while, but yeah, my name is Jimmy. It's not my real name. It's close enough. My dad's real name is Jimmy. So I chose that name to separate my online activism from my personal life. And I am in the military and I'm very proud of that. And, that comes with a lot of weight sometimes because people think they got you all figured out. You wear a uniform and they know exactly who you are. But to say that the military, the military members are somehow monolithic is wrong. I mean, we are a body of different individuals and personalities, and we've got different passions and joys and different lives. And, it's really amazing to be able to serve and get to know so many different people, travel the world. I think that's really where my atheism took hold or came to fruition. I struggled with religion for a long time. I'm 42 years old right now. I'm probably been an atheist full-fledged for about 15 years, about the time I left home and joined the military and decided to kind of go out and see the world. I have some education in history and international relations. So I got my bachelor's degree in history and later got a master's degree in international relations with a focus on international commerce, which is just kind of a fancy way of saying I studied a little bit of economics.
Okay.
yeah. Trade specifically.
I can say I'm an anthropologist because I took one semester of humanities.
Oh, well, there you go. You're an expert, just like I am.
Definitely.
But I think most importantly, though, I am a father. I'm a husband. And I love my family, and I got my own little tribe, in our cozy little house. But yeah, I struggled with my religion for a really long time. I never really believed what I was being taught. I thought there was a lot of hypocrisy. I thought there was a failure of leadership, which is something that I hold true to this day. And a reason why, when you asked me, what do you want to talk about? I said, let's talk about failed leadership in religion, because I don't even know if there's a such thing as bad leadership. There's just really no leadership in religion. Even though you might point to the person at the front of the room and say, well, that's a leader, I would disagree. But, throughout my upbringing,
It's debatable.
yeah, well, it really comes down to how you define leadership, and we can get into that later. But
Mhm,
I think that I always felt that church religion was very hypocritical. When I got out of my comfort zone and started traveling and meeting all types of different people, I realized that I could have conversations that I wasn't used to having. Even growing up in a very eclectic society like New York, or
mhm.
more specifically Long Island, New York, where I'm from, but still very diverse, lots of different types of people everywhere. But I just think I was closed off. Um, and yeah, I moved on and adopted some newfound perspectives of the world, and eventually decided or was able to work up the courage to contact the ACA and say, hey, maybe I can work with you. And so that was about a little over 2 years now, and I've been doing shows with them for that long. And I met you, and here we are.
Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey.
I do love our, wonderful little community that we have at
Yeah,
the AC. I'm like, I always say, like I have like you guys are like part of my chosen family,
right, right.
because I don't have to like pretend to be something that I'm not. I don't have to censor my words. I don't have to censor my opinions, and that's a really and like people were very supportive when I was going through some shit that past couple of years. So 2 years prior to this year, and it's just been like it was very comforting during that time to have people that were that just had your back and
Hmm.
didn't
Hmm.
really expect anything in return. So that was really nice.
Yeah, I think that word chosen is incredibly important. And not to say that family is not important. I think it
Yep.
is, but you you are often stuck with family, and the tribe that you find yourself in can be very different than your family, and you choose those people, and that is where oftentimes your strongest support comes from, and I just think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it's needed. I don't. I think that. I mean, there's a lot more people that, and especially with the rise of social media and people having a little bit more
Yeah,
mobility,
yeah,
to find their tribes, find people that get them, care about them, and I think that shouldn't be diminished. Like, obviously, I love my family,
sure.
but I don't. But I'm not close to my family.
Yeah,
Um, when I want help, I usually think of like my chosen family, people that I can reach out to, and people that that can reach out to me, and I think that that is the thing that like when you think of the people that love and will help you, where does your mind go?
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and I
And
think that's
I think you hit the nail on the head, because you said, I have my chosen family who I can be myself around. And it's striking that so often the people that you feel like you should be closest with, you have to put the mask on around the most, and you have to have your guard up the most. Right. So the family that you end up being stuck with, uh, those are the ones who could be the most judgmental and maybe even the most hurtful. Um, and so I don't find that with my chosen family.
I don't like it's hard because I love my family, but I can't be like my family doesn't know I'm queer. Well, they probably do. I'm all over the fucking internet talking about it, but
Yeah,
they won't acknowledge it.
yeah,
I don't think they they know. I think they have problems with me being a feminist and an atheist and being really fucking outspoken. like
yeah,
I'm not fitting into a narrative that they want for me, and I think that's hard for them to understand. And I'm not poo pooing on it, but that's just a perspective they have. Where in these spaces, I don't have to pretend. I don't
mhm,
have to put a mask on. I can even be my weird ADHD self and not have to mask so much for that as well. And I think that makes a huge difference, um, especially in a and in a world where there's certain expectations that are put upon you, which brings me to your topic, actually.
Okay.
Look at me segueing.
Man, you did that effortlessly. You shouldn't even
I
tell me
know. So why we've had it, like, you've stepped into more of a leadership role doing the nonprofits. So what is your perspective as far as when we're talking about leadership and religion? The Pope died. Oh no.
Uh-huh.
I'm so sad. Not
Yeah.
a great leader died, everybody.
Well,
now Magical Smoke's gonna choose the next one.
yeah, right. Oh boy. So as far as the Pope, right? My perspective on leadership in that realm, I would say that I don't find much actual good leadership in religion. I will say, though, the caveat being that this Pope was significant in the way that he tried to stand up. And I'm going to caveat this in a second. So don't, you know, spit your drink out right now. Just let me get through this thought. But the Pope died, and this Pope tried to nudge, I think, the needle away from so much hate and bigotry towards the LGBTQ community, and he did some unorthodox things there. Even though, in the end, did he really do anything? Not really. But I think that was probably the closest, and this is where you come into failed leadership of religion. That's probably the closest that he ever came to actually being a leader. In the end, all you're really doing when you're a religious leader is telling people exactly what to think and exactly what to do and exactly how to behave. And that doesn't bring out the best in people. In fact, it suppresses the very best that people have to offer. And you're not leading them to a better life that way. You're
Right.
actually pushing them into a deeper, darker corner of their own psyche, right? Into a place that they're uncomfortable being and that they don't like being, but they feel like they have to be, because to do the opposite is to go against what they've been indoctrinated with. And that is what religious leaders do. It's what they did throughout my life when I was a Christian, and it's what I still see them and hear them doing now, whether it's at a wedding or at a funeral. They say things that are not productive to helping people be the best that they can be. When you're at a wedding and you hear the priest or the clergy member, for example, tell the bride and groom, "And I hope you have a lot of babies." I think that, and that's a real story, I think that's disgusting, right? You don't belong. You don't belong in that that part of people's lives. But what is that doing for the woman? What is that doing for the woman by reinforcing this idea that women are supposed to be incubators and subservient to men? Because that is what I hear when I hear things like that, and so that's not helping women to be any better. And so I hope that, before I start taking over and going on one of my tangents, I mean, I think that's my preliminary answer and some examples to the problem, the lack of leadership in religion.
So why do you think, like, in your own words, there's like this default belief that people, that if you're given any sort of like a clergy position, that you're going to be a good leader? Like, why is because there seems to be a natural, like, like, well, you study, you went to seminary, so you're gonna be like a really good person to lead other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that we as people, as a species, if you will, but certainly as many different societies, we have all adopted this idea that the person who does the will of that God is by default a good person, right? And they have set aside certain temptations, certain needs in order to fulfill the will of this God and to serve the people. That is the cookie cutter definition that we're all programmed with. Now, we know by being people who question that power structure as we grow up through life that many of those people don't fit that mold. In fact, there are probably more people unfit to be in a leadership position, a so-called leadership position. But they're the ones that are willing to put on that facade. And so they get the bragging rights to be the person that is the good person, is the morally superior, the morally sound example for everybody to follow. And I just think that that comes from generational, perpetual brainwashing that religion does. And it's rooted in tribalism, the kind of tribalism that allows people to other people not like them, to
Right.
create a sense of belonging, to look out
Mhm.
and meet the human survival instinct, where there's safety in numbers and there's an identity to create those numbers. Christianity is no different than any other kind of grouping that we do, whether it's political or ethnic or cultural in some way.
Mhm.
Religion serves that same purpose. And so for some reason, people just like to be led, and that's okay. Not everybody's a leader, but we do, I think, naturally look for the leader. And in religious structures specifically, we install people as leaders that are not cut out to be there. And so, to answer your question, I think that it's a doctrinal thing, right? We look for people who are going to fill this doctrinal definition of what a leader is, but also it's an innate kind of instinctive thing. And when those two converge, we don't always end up with the best possible outcome. And the reason that religion is so bad at it is because there is a certain pattern that everybody must follow. But we know as human beings that not everybody is built the same, and so it's never going to work.
Right. So what do you think embodies a good leader?
Well, I think that empowerment is really the key factor in being a good leader. Okay, I think bringing out the best in other people is by far and away the best leadership quality that one can have. That is my single answer, right? But there's so many other factors that go into it. There are different types of leadership skills. You can be a transactional leader where people get support, they get guidance based on their contribution or based on their actions. You can be somewhat of a laissez-faire leader where you give maybe minimal guidance and you kind of sit back and you're a little bit hands off and you kind of observe what happens and you step in where you need to. You could be a micromanager where you are just in everybody's shit all the time and everything has to be your way. Now, I would say that religion is more or less a micromanagement type of leadership style, which can have its benefits, but it's certainly not applicable to everybody or every situation. And a good leader, while they're lifting up their people and bringing out the best in them and strengthening them and strengthening the group as a result, a good leader also knows how to employ these different leadership skills based on personality types, based on circumstance, based on situation. And they don't necessarily have to just be one way with everyone about everything. In fact, I shouldn't say they don't necessarily have to be that way. They shouldn't be that way. And so if you are avoiding that blanket leadership style that you apply to everyone and everything, then you're failing at leadership.
No, I agree. I think that one of the things that when I've led things is that when to lead is to serve.
Sure.
That you have something, that a particular talent or a particular perspective, something that people admire, and you want to take on the responsibility of like helping people and training them or whatever. But it's to their benefit. It's not to your benefit. It's to them because you did the work. If you're a kind of authority on anything, you kind of did the work to get there.
Yeah.
So you have to take that on, and then it's to serve the people that you're actually trying for them to build certain skills, or you're trying to improve them. So it like that's kind of my perspective on it. Because when I was like a pagan high priestess, That was like our motto was everyone is a student and everyone is a teacher.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, but like we were like facilitators, but I was in a leadership role, and I never want anyone to feel diminished.
Mhm.
I was like, hey, you want to learn this? Great. I'll guide you. You're gonna read and you're gonna do a presentation.
Yeah.
I was like, because that's the only way you're gonna learn. It's I'm not gonna sit there and hold your hand, the whole time, I've carried that into, my secular life.
Absolutely.
And I think that I think religion, from my perspective, and I'm not saying every religious leader is like this, but it's a vibe that
Sure.
that
Got that
it
right.
is. I am the authority. I was thinking about Greg Locke today. I don't know why he popped into my head when I was on my way to work, because I was
Yeah, I don't
not.
know either.
I don't know why. I like ADHD brain. I'm just driving, and I was just thinking about like, this is fun. I think I was thinking about our conversation today, and then like my brain was like, Greg Locke is a terrible leader because he doesn't actually care about his congregation. He cares about what the congregation does for him.
Sure.
He doesn't serve. He's not serving his congregation.
Yeah. Well, I think an old adage that I think is applicable to almost every religious leader, quote unquote, leader or organization is, when the church needs your help, they will ask you for money. But when you need the church's help, they try to tell you to pray or try to teach you how to pray. It's not a twofold transactional relationship, if you will. Somebody's benefiting and somebody is not. And that's another thing too. Religious quote unquote leaders, they don't encourage you to do the work like you said. They don't encourage you to question things and to learn. They claim to give you all of the tools and then they will do the interpretation for you. So there's really no thought. There's no exercising your brain. There's no building the patterns of troubleshooting and problem solving, which is what leaders need to have anyway. So you as a leader should always be developing future leaders because someday you're going to need leadership. But the church doesn't do that unless they're building other priests or clergy members. But they're certainly not going out into the community to try and make it stronger by allowing people to tap in to their full potential. The only potential for them is in the Bible or in the Quran. And we can go on and on about all the reasons why that is just not good advice.
No, and I agree with you. And I think there's a little bit of frustration with it too, because um I think my frustration with too is like, when you're in a I don't want people to think like me. Like, don't. Like, I don't know shit.
Right.
Please don't. Like, I'm like, the only thing I want you to think like me is like, don't be a bigot. Like, that is the like, please, I want to I think you should be aligned on that.
Yeah,
Bare
sure.
minimum. Everything else at the end of the day is kind of like, don't listen to me. Like, and if I say something, and even if it's factually correct, go look it up. Like, just
Yeah.
don't listen to me, because like, I don't want that type of responsibility. Where I think like religious leaders, they want the responsibility, but they don't know what to do with it. And they
Yeah.
also they're like, well, I speak for, God or Allah or Bob the Wonder Toast or whatever. And if you're speaking for a spiritual deity, if you're challenged, if you're questioned, you're not going to take that well, because you're supposed to have the authority of this, of your God. And if someone comes to you and is like, hey, um, like I'll use an example. If you're a Catholic priest, why are you giving marriage advice?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Or any kind of advice really like that has to do with the family or
Relationships and
household
yeah,
economy. Maybe you
yeah.
should save money, maybe you should split up the chores. Like, where in your training have you accumulated the skill or the expertise to be able to talk about something like that? Now, from a human level, if you want to talk to me about that, that's fine. But understand, you don't have the same kind of life. You can't relate in any way. So maybe this just isn't your avenue. But then again, there are so many avenues that aren't appropriate for the clergy. And, you know, you say, you said something along the lines of, you know, not having the skills or something like that. You know, when religious people are in a leadership position, when they're being brought up to lead, they're not given leadership skills. They are just given scripture, maybe some education on the scripture, on the theology, but they're actually not given any coping mechanisms. They're not given any kind of real life scenarios that they can instill in others for advice or for direction. You know, everything comes from kind of a made up, fantastical world that really has no place in the universe.
Well, yeah. Like I use that example because when I got married to my first husband, I was Catholic, and we had to go to like this Catholic training camp. Well, like marriage counseling.
Yeah.
And even when I was like, and I was young, I was 21. So again, not the best decision to get married at 21, obviously, because we're not to be divorced after 8 years. But that being said, that being said, I even remember thinking, like, why am I listening to this guy? He's never been married.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know what's like. I mean, he's part of a priesthood, so he's living with other priests, which is fine, you know. But I'm like, you don't know what it's like to live like day to day with someone. And also, and I was already living with my ex-husband when we went, because I was trying to make my parents happy. They didn't like that because we were boinking before marriage, and they don't like you to boink before marriage, and they like kind of look like, you know, kind of look down on you for that. And that's another thing about the leadership. It's like, if you're a good leader, you're not looking down on someone for making a choice. Yeah. Like, unless the choice is hurting somebody, like, you shouldn't be looking down on someone for making a choice that, you know, you wouldn't want to, even if it's a choice you don't want to do. It's like, that's a choice. Like, you don't have to live the same way as somebody else. But I think that the natural default is to be judgmental.
Absolutely. And that's the problem. You know, a leader of, or the head of an organization that will expel you for not being like everybody else or not doing what they say that you have to do, is just a poor example of somebody to look up to. I mean, how do you go to this place week after week, year after year, and tell your children, this is the kind of person that we should look up to and we should listen to? And at the same time, people just like that person are being arrested for heinous crimes, and usually involving children, those that involve children. These are the kinds of people that we are supposed to look up to. And if there was any kind of leadership in these organizations, they would be working from the inside to shut it down, right? They would be infiltrating the mess, the chaos, the hypocrisy, and closing up shop and doing it better next time. But how these organizations continue is beyond me. Think about a bakery. Think about a karate studio or whatever that gets in trouble, that gets caught committing crimes against children, being open the following day. Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Right.
But instead, you know, we live with this idea that it's appropriate for the Catholic Church to have a fund that comes from the donations of its congregations to prepare for legal battles for people who are accused, for clergy members who are accused of crimes against children. I mean, that is the kind of preparation they take. And I have to ask, where is the leadership? I mean, you're busy railing against the LGBTQ community, and you've got your own systemic issues. I would like to see somebody step up and change something.
You would. And that's the thing, like, when, especially being Catholic, a former Catholic, and I left because of the sex abuse scandal, because the Spotlight scandal happened. I stayed away from we were part of the Boston Diocese when the Spotlight scandal exploded back in 2002. I was a young mother, and I'm like, nope, I'm done. Bye.
Yeah.
Because my moral alignment, it went against everything that I, as a decent human being, like, don't harm kids. I think like that's a very like basic thing to ask from an organization. And then the cover-ups. And then you realize that this institution that is supposed to, that is the example of, the divine or whatever, is full of fucking perverts. And you're just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, maybe the no sex thing is not working for them. I mean, have they ever thought of that? I'm sure they've thought of it. But I mean,
I don't think it's also celibacy. I like people that hurt kids in that way, they will go where the kids are. It's like, and so I don't think it's just the celibacy. I think it's also the fact that you get access to kids.
Yeah.
Because there's a natural default because you're a priest that you are a good person.
Right. Right. And it's a problem. And I think just by bringing up the celibacy point, what I'm also asking is maybe it's just not a celibacy. Maybe it's a normalcy issue. Why can't you have a normal life and still try to quote unquote lead a congregation? Why can't you be the kind of person that, is out in the community, goes to ball games, has a family, has kids, does the same things that the rest of America is doing? Are you laughing at some kind of Dickie's comment?
I was laughing at Scott's comment. Popel. It just made me giggle. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And
I wasn't laughing at.
I trust me. I was
laughing at child abuse.
Yeah, I know.
That would be bad. It's just very funny to me because like I don't understand why people hold this institution to such like this very like substandard sort of expectation. Because like I'm like, if you have that much power, I hold you to a lot of fucking expectations. Yeah. And you're failing.
That is fair. That is a fair. Yeah. I think that the ability to influence others, that should raise the standards for you. That should raise the stakes in how you conduct yourself. Not to say that people who have no responsibility shouldn't be good stewards of society, but when you are charged with essentially being a leader, there is a certain expectation that people have of you. And I don't think that we get that from the church. I really don't. I think that anybody that is peddling these kinds of heinous lies ought not to be in that position. I mean, when is the world going to realize that like societies are better off when women have freedoms and they're allowed to work? Economies are better, right? Societies are just better when people have equal rights. Heck, we've got women emerging as leaders, women emerging as good stewards of society that otherwise would not have been there had religion been allowed to function the way that it's designed to function. Case in point, African Americans. We know that Christian churches were hotbeds of oppression and racism. And once we as a society, and I shouldn't say once as if it's over, but we have made some major grounds as far as passing legislation for equal rights and voting and, overcoming the systemic racism that's built into our society. Once we were able to do that, look at how much better things have gotten. Sports is so much more entertaining because we've got different kinds of people playing, right. And politics is so much more inclusive and affects society as a whole because we've got diversity. We've got diversity leading legislation that affects people and takes into account perspectives that we as white Christians would never have thought of. Right. And so I am so grateful to have had access to different kinds of people. I'm so grateful for coming in contact with the ACA, even though it took me, 12 years after finding the ACA to reach out and say, hey, can I be a part of your organization? there were still so many people that I tuned into regularly, week after week, to just learn from and hear from and hear speak conversations that I never thought it was possible to have and that I didn't know that were going on out there, and allowed me to embrace my atheism and look at people in a different perspective. Excuse me. I've got I've got a carbonated beverage.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's your own fault. At least I'm drinking orange juice and vodka.
Yeah. Yeah. I went with the alcoholic beverage that has a little pop to it. So anyway,
I'm insulted, Kelly, because I'm first. Like, I'm just kidding.
The whole crew's here, huh? Kelly, Scott, AJ's here. So AJ said she's looking at an article that says the Catholic Church has spent $10.6 million in the Northeast to fight legislation that would help victims of clergy sexual abuse seek justice.
That we did.
Disgusting.
We did a story on it. We did a story on it.
I know. Yeah, we've talked about this case multiple times. And what could 10 million, how many college educations could $10 million pay for? How much food can you put on people's tables? You know, how many shoes can you buy kids? Clothes can you buy for kids? School books? How much gas money? How many, bus tickets to get to and from school? Instead, you're fighting to protect pedophiles. And this is an organization that we should look to as the morally superior institution of our time. I think not. And you know what? I'm proud that we live in a time where we can question and say these things openly, because 500 years ago, Helen, you especially, but you and I would have been burned alive or drowned or something. They would have tested you to see if you were a witch. They probably just would have killed me, cut my head off
for having opinions.
Yeah, right. But I will tell you this, from a historical perspective, once Martin Luther's 95 Thesis went up on that church door, the church has never recovered. They have never recovered. It was the beginning of the downfall of Catholicism and the fracturing of Christianity, and it will not stop. It will not stop. It will continue getting more fractured. More factions are going to continue to grow, and more Christians are going to fight with each other over what the true meaning of Christianity is, until they all realize they're all full of shit. And there's no way that they could all be right. I hope.
And I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like, I keep trying to wrap my brain around this, because maybe it's because I'm looking at it from a top-down perspective. I'm like, as soon as someone brings a counter argument, like if you listen to a couple of apologetics people from different religious perspectives, like, argue with each other, just listen to that. You're just gonna go, wait a minute, all this is crap. But that being said, I think that if we're gonna put like this, I feel that I have a certain standard for like political leaders, and I put them at a much higher level, because I'm like, you work for me, motherfucker.
Hell yeah.
But also at the same time, I'm like, you should be doing the same thing, because guess what? You're paying their salary.
Yeah.
You are giving them money. You're putting 10% of your income in that fucking coffer every week. So I would be holding them to a much higher standard, because guess what? I see you every week. You're supposed to be the counselor of my family. You're supposed to be giving me advice, spiritual advice, how to be a better person, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to even put you at a higher standard than, because my politician, I elect to, and we vote on legislation and things like that. But I'm going to see you. You're going to be part of a regular part of my life.
I agree. I agree completely. But again, I don't think it can work that way. I don't think it can work that way in religion when they have a doctrine that they have to keep to. So that's why I think leadership fails in church and in religion. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. And people might point to, examples of religious leaders like, I don't know, Martin Luther King, right? A great leader, and yes, a religious man, but he was not a religious leader. He was a societal reformer. I mean, he was a great speaker, had great ideas that really didn't have anything to do with religion. So before people try to counter an argument like that, that religion or that leadership cannot work in religion, think about what your examples are. Mohandas Gandhi, right? A Hindu, uh, didn't really have any Hindu beliefs in the sense that that's what he was using to expel the British from his country or bring equal rights to his country. There was nothing religious about that. And so I just don't see religion being a successful leadership vehicle. And at least in my experience, it certainly has not been. Especially as a kid in Sunday school. I always talk about the time where we had the teacher that told us that all Jews go to hell, which according to Christianity should check. I mean, that checks,
Yeah, that does check.
Yeah. So he told us that. And he told us, other people had told us that sometimes if you see somebody bomb an abortion clinic, that maybe it's God using that person to do that. We had all these things happening in these basement classrooms, and our parents had no idea what was going on in there. And that is a microcosm itself of some of the abuses of children. Now, I wasn't abused as a child, but I can tell you that my mind was certainly targeted, not so much my body. And that is what we subject our kids to. But anyway, I remember one teacher in particular, he couldn't handle us. He couldn't handle the room full of eighth graders, and he actually ended up quitting. And I said, well, what the hell kind of teacher is that? He just quits, right? And it's because he couldn't answer our questions, right? We wanted to know, why was it so wrong? We had this girl, she was great. We were in eighth grade. There was this girl, I don't know whatever happened to her, but she was awesome. Her name was Jacqueline, and she put this guy through the ringer. Like, I thought women weren't supposed to speak in church. Why am I here? Like, what's wrong? What am I? What's really?
She's my
I know.
hero.
And we were like 13, and I was like, holy shit, this girl's on fire, right? And asking like, well, what's really wrong with gay people being in love? And the guy couldn't answer it. It's the only answer is, well, God says it's wrong. Okay, but why is it actually wrong? Couldn't get a question out of him. And then Jacqueline started telling him he was corny, and he ended up quitting. And I'm like, wow, man, like that helped along my eventual deconstruction, the failed leadership of my superiors, quote unquote.
It is very it is one of those things. I remember I got into this, I was in high school, and we were having, because there when I was growing up in the 90s, there was a lot of teenage pregnancy going on, and Planned Parenthood came in, and there was a abstinence versus like a sexual education debate. I remember this clearly. And this woman came up, and I remember she was preaching abstinence, and I said, and she was a mother. I said, well, what are you going to do if one, like, what, like, I asked, I said, well, what if one of your kids, like, gets pregnant or gets an STD? And she goes, that would never happen. I go, how do you know that? Like, I don't know I think, because I had been volunteering for Planned Parenthood at the time, and I had a lot of the sexual education in my brain, and I was 17 years old, and I didn't give a fuck. I was like 16 or 17, and I still don't give a fuck. But I was like, why? Because you might think that you taught your kids well, but guess what? Your kids are individuals. Because my parents thought that, I was a good little Catholic girl, and I was having all kinds of queer sex when I was a teenager. So there you go.
And, that example that you gave right there just goes to show that this person has not been equipped with any skills to plan for contingencies, right? Like, something doesn't go according to your plan. She has no idea how to adjust and how to overcome that issue, right? And she would probably treat it like a problem and treat her kid like a problem, which is incredibly unfair to the child, and maybe to the child's child as well, assuming that it goes in that direction. But, this is just another example. Case in point, the example you gave of religion failing to lead people to bring out the very best in what they have to offer. That woman was um, holding back from her children or didn't have the skills to be the very best mother that she could. Right? This is why in religion, we see people kick their kids out of the house for dating somebody of the same sex or dating somebody of a different race, right? I've seen that a lot in Christian households, Christian families, these so-called morally superior people. And it all comes down to not knowing how to adjust to the very nuanced situations that life can throw at you. And that's what life is. Life is diverse. Life is nuanced. And the best leaders not only know how to counter all of those possibilities, but instill in people an ability to counter them as well. You're not going to get that from religion. You're not going to get that from your clergy. And, you know, for those of you out there that think you're going to get it, ask yourself, what good advice have you gotten from your clergy that has helped your life in any way? It might sound good. It might make you feel.
I'm trying to think.
It
Like, what was I told?
It doesn't actually help you. Okay? When you've got no money, but the church is saying it would be better for you to give some of what you don't have to them, that is not good advice. That is not somebody looking out for your best interests or helping you to be successful. And so that's a problem.
Right. And I think because like I mean like it's very weird because I got like mixed messaging, you know, because welcome to the Catholic Church. Mixed messaging all the time. I guess confusing. Like I was supposed to like the biggest things for the Catholic Church to get you to hell is that you don't unalive yourself and you can't be gay. Okay. So those are the rules.
Yeah.
The first one, having major depressive disorder when you're a teenager is great fun. So I obviously I failed, but that was the thing it was concerned, and being queer. So but like you would do, like as long as I marry a man, I'll be fine. Like mental gymnastics, guys. Which is dumb, obviously. But when I think also too, like when I think back, like, was I given any good advice? No, because I'm a woman and I'm supposed to be a broodmare. But then my parents wanted me to go to college and get an education and we're kind of like, you know, you have something to offer the world. But the church is telling me, no, you need to be home and be a broodmare. And I'm like, and my parents are Catholic. And I'm like, I'm so confused.
Yeah.
Like, which one is it? Like,
yeah. The big one for me is a Catholic college, or like, how do you exist?
And I went to a Catholic college for one semester.
I went to a Catholic college. I went to a Catholic college. And
where'd you go? Wait, what was your university? What school did you go
to? Manhattan University in New York City. Okay. A LaSallian Brotherhood Catholic college. Now, I will say this school has.
Okay, hold on. Pause. Hold on. I have to pee. Keep talking.
I'm going
Keep talking because I can hear you, but I have to go to the bathroom.
All right. No, don't hold it in on my expense. Okay. So listen, yeah, like that school, an order of the De La Sallian Christian Brotherhood, which was started in, I don't know, the 1700s or so. But in the 1800s or 1600s, in the 1800s, the first school, seminary school, was founded in Manhattan, in central Manhattan. And they grew and grew and grew. And then they ended up moving uptown into the Bronx and bought more land. And then they eventually became a private college, and then eventually opened it up to women. And now they are actually a very profound or renowned is the word I'm looking for, engineering school, but also a liberal arts and business school. And so I went there. I studied history. I went there because I liked the small campus feel in the middle of the big city, right? So it was the city, but it still had like a grass courtyard and parks. And it was its own tight-knit community. And there were all kinds of people there. They accepted everybody. So to say that it's a Catholic college is not quite accurate. It might have been founded by a Catholic order, and it certainly has Catholic clergy members that work there, but they have got all kinds of people there. They have got a Pride Center. They have got a Muslim Students Alliance. They've got all kinds of things going on there. So much so that they have actually been, I don't know what the word is, but let's just say cut off from the Catholic Church hierarchy. So they don't kick up to the Pope in Rome like the rest of the mafia style organizations that make up the Catholic Church, the different dioceses and archdioceses around the world. They don't kick up to the fund that protects pedophiles, so that's good. It was actually a really good school. I got a great education there, and I was grateful that they required me to take 3 courses or 15 credits. No, 9 credits in 9 credits in religious studies. Which helped helped my atheism along. I took literature of the Bible, which was great, because the very first day they asked who was in the Garden of Eden and told Eve to eat the apple, and everybody said Satan, and she said, "Really? Look again." And Satan is nowhere to be found. And boom, like my whole upbringing, right? And that's what you get when you spend your time taking your cues from the people with the book who tell you, don't read for yourselves. I'll just give you the answer, right? Trust me, it was Satan, but that's not in there. That's not in there. In fact, Satan, as we know it, doesn't even appear in the Bible, which is crazy to me. But yeah, they made me go ahead, Ellen. And
I was just gonna say, like, and like the God of the Old Testament is not the same as the two Testament gods are two different gods. Yeah. They're not the same God. It's a different mythology, and they contributed to the same God. I'm like, no. I'm like, no, it's different mythology. Keep it straight. And they don't. But like when I tell people that, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. I go, this is what happens when you start like actually understanding like history, like not just like scholarship history, not just like
to learn that Jewish people don't accept Jesus, and you never learn that. That is like a secret that the church keeps from you,
super secret,
as a kid until you grow up and you figure it out. I remember, even though at a younger age I learned that all Jews go to hell, right? It still didn't like click to me. I remember it being in 11th grade, because I told you the story about being in 8th grade and I had that girl challenging our teacher, our Sunday school teacher. I remember being 11th grade and asking my English teacher, like, wait, Mr. Man, you don't believe in Jesus? And he said, no, I don't. And I went, oh shit, I can't believe that he just said that out loud. Like I knew he was Jewish and I knew they had different beliefs, but the fact that he said that out loud was crazy to me. I couldn't believe, I've never heard that in my life, because where I came from, I think people were just too scared to be outspoken like that, because we still come from a very medieval mindset. Even though we like to think of ourselves as so enlightened, we are this capitalist democracy, as if that's always good for people. But in any case, we have grown so much since our medieval roots, right? But we still possess that mindset through the perpetual cycle of indoctrination. And so, yeah, I mean, in any case, that school that I went to, getting back to the college I went to, Manhattan University, it's now called. It was Manhattan College when I went to. Might have been founded by Catholics, but I tell you what, I was so grateful. Great experience. Went to college in New York City, had a great education. Really happy with the outcome, because I'm an atheist now. And they helped me. I mean, go figure. The Catholics helped me.
Well, to be fair, like when I went to Catholic school, religion is not science. Scholarship is not, religion. It's two separate things, and like the Catholic Church has a lot of fucking problems, but they do understand that theology is not science, or having to have an analytical mind. Like it has to be separate, because guess what, the Catholics did a lot of shitty things, scientists, in the past. So, and then they were proven right, and then they adjusted, and so that's fine. And that's why, like, when I left, I didn't go through like God didn't make the earth. I was like, I knew God didn't make the earth. I knew it was 3 point 8 billion years old.
Yeah.
And, it was just like, I just don't think God pushed anything into existence
I'll tell you
because we
what,
don't know.
ninth grade earth science. I mean, I failed it twice, but I'll tell you what, I learned that the earth was it 3? Maybe I didn't learn.
3.8 or 3.6.
Yeah, 3.8 billion years old. And I was like, oh shit, the Bible's off. The Bible's not right.
What denomination you grew up?
I was Lutheran, actually. I was
You did Catholic Light.
Yeah, right. I did Catholic Light. My father grew up Catholic, but my father was never really like, I think he's still of the cultural Christian mindset. Like, I love you, Dad, if you ever see this, and I think you're a great man and a wonderful father. You don't know shit about the religion or the God that you say you believe in. And that's the case with most Christians. They've never read the book. They have no idea what's in it. They just know that that's the way they're supposed to be because that's their tribe. That's the way that their tribe is.
Right.
And so they have to say some things and act in certain ways. And so I think I got that, I got those kinds of things at home. But we really were only religious for the hour and a half a week that we went to church. And even then, I'm sure my dad couldn't wait to get home to catch the football game. And I couldn't wait to get home to play with my friends, So we didn't do any like religious lessons throughout the week or any other time. We more or less did the hour a week. We showed our face. Sometimes we went on Christmas Eve, but not really, and then on Easter, of course, those were like the two big times, but we usually went every Sunday. But so somebody, all right. So there's some talk in the side chat. So I guess Scott thinks AJ's calling me out. So she says, some say the character in the book of Job is Satan, named Ha-Satan. Others say it is not. What's your understanding? My understanding is that that is an ad hoc or a post hoc rationalism. Satan, the word Satan in the Old Testament, from what I understand, is an old Hebrew term that was like the tempter or the doubter or something like that. It wasn't a person. It was a description of the entity of the spirit or whatever it was that was testing God. And so I think that later the Christians kind of took this idea of the Satan and just named it Satan and called Satan the devil or called Lucifer Satan, and kind of just merged them all together, and created like the evil character. And it made it easier to tell their story, to blame somebody, right? Well, what about the archaeological record? Satan put that there. What about this thing that contradicts exactly everything you're saying? Well, that's what Satan wants you to believe, right? But in reality, there really is no one Satan. There's no one evil thing in the Old Testament, from what I understand. In fact, the Jewish concept of hell and the New Testament concept of hell, as wishy-washy as it is, and as all over the place as it is incredibly different. In fact, when you go from the beginning of the New Testament to the end of the Old Testament, hell becomes more defined, right? At first, it's calling hell Hades, which is the Greek version, the Greek word for hell, which wasn't the place that people actually went typically. It wasn't a place for bad people. Hades was a place that you could go, but there was also good parts and there were bad parts, and not everybody necessarily went there. It depended on your status in life, right? Helen, are you muted? I am not hearing you, Helen. I hope you're hearing me.
I forgot to turn my microphone back on.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
So yeah. I was saying that, like, in Greek mythology, like, you're like, Karen kind of takes you, across the river Styx to, kind of, to lack of it, like, you go to a good place, a bad place, or a medium place.
Yeah.
Like that. That's kind of how it worked. That's a very Greek mythology sort of way, because they didn't have a concept of eternal torment.
Yeah.
They had. So, but they were afraid of Hades. There are worship sites in Greece for the entrance into the underworld, but so it was seen as a place of reference, but they weren't super digging on Hades. Like they were kind of like, we have to kind of worship you to kind of make you happy, but he wasn't as important as like Zeus or Poseidon or
Right.
like Artemis or anything like that. You know,
Well,
he was. They were just kind of like, you're the god of death. We're hi.
the god
Hello.
of the underworld, and you could go to Hades and be in a good
Yeah.
place. Like
Yep.
right? So like it wasn't necessarily bad. But even so, as you go through the Old Testament, it's 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 the lake of fire. There's gnashing and gnawing of teeth, whatever the hell that means. Like it doesn't really explain exactly what happened. And I think what happens is because people don't read their Bible now, it's able to stick. But because in the Middle Ages, when Bibles were all printed in Latin and the only people who could read Latin were the clergy, nobody ever really knew what the Bible said, right? And so the priests, the clergy, could make up whatever they wanted, and a lot of that devolved into demons and Satan with a pitchfork, using with the horns, which actually comes from an ancient Sumerian myth, the god Sin, um, or Nana, as it was called first, and then Sin later, in the Akkadian Empire. But what happens is Sin had the symbol of the bullhorns, right? And that symbolized the crescent moon. Sin was the moon god, and the crescent moon kind of looks like bullhorns. And so eventually, right, the worship of bulls and golden calves and things like of that nature became a really bad thing in Jewish and Canaanite society. And that eventually evolved into Satan. And so there's a long history that feeds the beliefs that people typically don't dig into, or try to rectify in their thinking in any way. Nobody checks the things that they've been told, and so
Mhm.
that's how you end up with these really inflated, really made up, post hoc, rationalized concepts of hell and the devil. And thank you, AJ, for asking about Satan in Job.
Yeah. Oh, what's really interesting though, kind of because I'm reading David Fitzgerald's series of books right now on the history. Highly recommend Playing God.
Yeah,
The evolutionary history of world religions. I'm reading about the Christian religion right now. Fun stuff. Oh my God, it's so interesting. But that being said, like when our modern version of religion is not what the ancients believed, what they did. It's a completely different because guess
yeah,
what? People evolve, things evolve and change and move and morph. And even some old beliefs people had about like the Christian religion don't even stick points anymore, you know. So it kind of goes against people being a very good leader in your religion because it's just like what version are we doing, man? Are we doing
yeah.
like 2,500 years ago? Or are we doing like, like evangelical Christianity, which wasn't a thing till the 1800s, late 1800s at that.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
what we doing,
Yeah.
man?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, there is no really one way. There's no. I mean, I did a promo for Talk Heathen a few weeks ago, talk about how Jesus was a terrible leader. Jesus doesn't pop in to correct people, tell them what they're doing wrong and how they could do it better. Jesus just lets all the Christians kill each other, fight with each other, right? Steal from the poor. I mean, what is Jesus's role here, and how is he leading people at all? He's not, quite frankly, and neither are any of the Christian clergy members that claim to lead in his stead. And that's how we end up with all these denominations, because there really is no right way to do it. What is the right way to do something that is completely made up? You know, it's a game. It's LARPing. It really has no proof, no evidence to it that brings it to fruition, and it's dangerous. That kind of thing is dangerous. Sorry, these are my tangents. Now we're falling into some serious tangents.
don't fall into tangents. It's fine. I'll give you a platform. Fall into
So
tangents. That's our MO, Jimmy. It's like we're not even doing the nonprofit so we can fall into
yeah,
tangents.
the reason why the reason why leadership is so important to me is because
Mhm.
I think, I started off having experience with leadership. After high school and through college, I worked construction jobs and I was put in charge pretty early on. And it was hard for me because I was not a good leader. I was terrible. I yelled, I raised my voice. I told people what to do in a tone that was not conducive to good teamwork. I was still good at my job, and we were a good crew. But there could have been major improvements that would have just made things go really well. I carried that over into my military life, and I had a lot of development that I needed to do as I had progressed through the ranks. There was a lot of trial and error about what worked and what didn't, until I finally realized, like, leadership is not about me getting my way. Leadership is me making sure that I give people the tools to get their way, and that I bring out the best in those people. But there are so many different paths I went down. I burned some bridges, and I failed. And I had really negative impacts and bad relationships with people because of the way that I thought I was leading, which turned out to be
Mhm.
not so great, right? But that's the thing. I was able to adjust. I was able to get feedback, right? I was able to have constructive criticism and suck it up and say, yo, you suck, man. Like, fix it.
Right.
When does that happen? When does that happen in religion? When does that happen in
I
your
have no idea.
and it
I don't think it happens
does not happen.
because we wouldn't have hate preachers if it did. Like, sorry, keep
Yeah.
going.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, where I am now and where I came from, my perspective on what a good leader is has changed so much. It's not about following one person's doctrine. It's all about making sure that you come up with your own doctrine. Exercise what works for you and help other people exercise what works for them. That's great leadership. And that is a way to build loyalty. That is a way to build solidarity with people. That is a way to construct these really beneficial networks that you and I were talking about in the beginning, where we
Mhm.
have the family we choose, and it's because we are all in solidarity with one another about what's important, and how we can best succeed, help each other, help ourselves. I mean, these are the things that are really important in life.
And because we know to us, like, this is all we got as far as we know.
Yeah,
So
right.
so when I think about that, like, one of my this is a quote that I live by. I say this a lot, but my friend Laura said this, like, this was like 15 years ago. She's like, at the end, I want to go look back at my life and know that I did good.
Yeah,
Everything else doesn't really matter. And
yeah.
and so I always try to think in that mindset. Like, I want to be able, if I, if I were to pass away, tomorrow, that if I look back on my life, I would be like, I got a good run.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think a good leader says, if I pass away tomorrow, there are some
Sorry,
things I could have.
Eli showed up, so I was waving.
Eli, Eli, thanks for ruining my topic. Thanks for ruining my
Sorry, go
criticism.
ahead. God, Eli.
No, no, I'm just kidding. Eli's great.
Yeah, I know.
Eli doesn't ruin anything. He makes it better.
Yeah.
But you know, I think a good leader always recognizes, or always at least holds himself to a higher standard and say, yeah, I did good, but it could have been better. And here's the way I want to improve that later. Uh, and that includes giving yourself some leeway to make mistakes. But ultimately, I'm never satisfied with the people I lead, because I do lead people. I lead a lot of people now at my current stage of life. Um, and I fail. I fail as a father. I fail as somebody of a higher rank in my military profession, where people look up to me and I don't always do what I'm supposed to do, not for a lack of trying, but maybe for some other reason. It's certainly not because I don't care, but it's just because shit happens. And I will have people tell me, "Hey, you're a great leader. You're a great mentor." And we all We all feel that way about you. But and forgive me, I'm not trying to turn this into a brag. Honestly, that was a surprise to me because I heard that news recently from my the group of people I lead. And I said, huh, that's interesting because I'm constantly thinking of ways, to just do things a little bit better, to prepare better, to speak better. And so, I feel like I will look back and be like, not only do I feel like I did good, but I was never satisfied with how well I did, that I tried to keep doing better. And that I think is a key facet for good leadership. And again, I have to finish that thought with, don't quite think that you're getting that out of religion, because the only advice that they are pulling from is what's in that old book, that old ancient book that doesn't apply to society in any way, shape, or form. So,
Right. Yeah, and I think that's also the frustration, um, because I think that there's a certain amount of like expectation I have of people being decent. One, and two, there has to when we're talking about like leadership, I kind of think to myself, I'm like, well, if you're not bringing any sort of talent to the table, one, and I'm talking about religious leadership, and I'm going off on a tangent now, so here we go.
perfectly suitable tangent.
I know, thank you. So if you're not bringing like a talent or a skill or anything like that you can offer to the world, or even to people, you know, why do you get to, because you believe in a sky daddy or sky mommy or whatever, that you now get to tell everybody how to exist?
Yeah.
And I have problems with that because it's not everybody has to be in agreement. But then if a person fails, it's not the leader's problem, it's the problem with the person, even though the leader was kind of telling them what to do, and then won't help like correct it or take any responsibility for it, because we are influenced by others and it goes down this weird sort of like fucking path. Like, yes, you are responsible for your choices, I get that, but religion is all about indoctrination, and following the leader.
Yeah. And you know what? On that note, like my heart actually really goes out to a lot of clergy members who realize that they've been duped, that they have been.
We're going to have the clergy project. If
the clergy project is
links in the description, guys.
Things. Is it really? That's awesome.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of secular organizations in my Jubilee do.
That is one of the best organizations I have ever heard. There have got to be so many people out there in the closet. And yes, now you know how it feels. Now you know how it feels, right? To be a person and you're told exactly who you are and you're told who you have to be, but you keep the real you concealed. That's what being in the closet's all about. And a lot, it's quite the irony that so many clergy members are living in the closet and they're afraid to be themselves. You know why? Because their society will turn on them and devour them. They will kick them out. They will take everything they have. They will ostracize them and treat them as if they are nothing, less than nothing. And that is not leadership. That is not community. I have to chuckle because people say, well, I go to church for community. What kind of community is it? The kind that will ostracize you? The kind that will disown you? That's not community. That's not community. That's a cult.
No, and I agree with you 100%. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Again, like the Clergy Project is run by I think a former evangelical leader and a Catholic nun, which is really cool.
There's still a Catholic nun or former?
No, former Catholic nun. And one of the major problems too is that not only will you be shunned and they'll take away your home because they're making their money off the church and stuff like that, you have no skills
That's
to offer to the
right.
world. and again, bad leadership, because it's just, because again, like, we usually want people to have a diversity of skills, because if a job goes away, like a position goes away, you want to be able to, based on your job training, be able to bring it someplace else. And if you're thinking like, well, I got really good leadership training, and then you go to try to, like, get some kind of position where you are part of managing a team or whatever, and then you find out, guess what? You don't have the skills that you thought you did.
And that is the design. That is the structure. Keep people uneducated, keep people stupid, keep people incapable, and they will stick with you because they've got no place else to go, right? And it's almost as if the church will hold on to you, even if you don't believe. Just don't talk about it. Just keep doing the work we need, keep bringing in the money, and basically you can keep your house and your car and your free food and drink, but keep doing the things that we groomed you to do. And it's just such a tragedy for so many people. And the biggest tragedy of that is that, Christianity is responsible for nearly 70 million deaths since the inception of the first pope, which I think was in the year 600 or so. So who knows in the 300 to 400 years prior to that, how many deaths they've led to. But I would be embarrassed. I honestly would be embarrassed, if I was still a Christian. Well, maybe I wouldn't, because I'd be none the wiser, but I can't see coming into contact with education and science and history and finding ways to stick to my roots. And that brings me back to the point I made earlier. How do you be an education system or exist as an education system and as a religious organization? It's an oxymoron. It's an oxymoron. Yeah.
So, just to answer your question, okay, so if we're going to do like official, it was St. Peter, but as a pope. But the first actual Nicaea as to what schism, where there was the schism between the two different places within the Catholic Church, happened between 325 and 1054.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Between there. So there you go.
So you had the Nicene and the Arian Catholics, and then the 325, I think, was the first Council of Nicaea, which everybody thinks that everything was hashed out there, but there was like,
oh my God, no, that's why it's to 1025.
Yeah, I know. There was like, I think 8 different meetings over the course of like 500 years. But the first Council of Nicaea actually talked a lot about how eunuchs would be used in church rituals and things like that, which is disgusting. I mean, think about your religion. One of the hallmark pieces of legislation centers largely on cutting off the balls of young boys and figuring out how they are going to serve in the institution. It's fucking gross. And nobody knows that. Nobody ever takes the time to look into where these terms come from. I grew up in the Lutheran church, and part of our recitation each week was the Nicene Creed, which included "We believe in the Catholic Church" and blah blah blah. But the Nicene Creed, I mean, comes from this idea that the church had a major argument over whether or not Jesus was equal to God, and Jesus was supernatural, and of course he was deemed to be equal or to be the same as God and supernatural, and the Nicenes kind of won the day, and the Arians were kind of pushed away to the side. But here I am as a child reciting the Nicene Creed, which had a lot to do with children losing their testicles, which is fucking gross. And it's a house of cards religion. And growing up and learning all this stuff, it's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. I don't know.
I'm sorry, AJ. Like I have Catholic family members, and they're uber Catholic, but they're also okay with queer people. So, but I'm sorry, that sucks. And it's hard, but also they don't want to hear any criticisms of the church. Again, chosen family. I can criticize the fucking church all I want around here. It's very refreshing. So, but I think also like this whole idea that leadership has to come from authority. And I'm not saying that you're in a place of authority, that it has to be granted to you by authority. That you can't find the thing that you can lead people with, because in religion it's kind of handed, like passing a torch, which I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, but in the design of religion, that is a feature, not a bug. Where like, if you develop a particular, good skill set, and you find that you have influence, and you are like, oh, people listen to me, oh, okay, and also you have people that check your ass,
Yeah.
you can excel. But I think that with religion, it's like, no, it's in service to a god or the church. It's not in service to others, to the people that might actually take something away from, what you have to teach.
Yeah, and it's funny too to hear. I'm looking at these conversations, and I'm hearing
Yeah.
you talk about. Uh, I'm hearing you talk about the service to the God. There's no proof of the God. Never been. Never been.
Nope.
Not one person in history of human civilization, of human existence, has ever demonstrated not only proof of a God, but the fact that they can talk to relatives or spirits or whatever the hell else they believe, right? I'm seeing these conversations where people are saying, well, this is, they have family members, and they try to explain biology, and the people are going, well, that's just the way I am, and if you don't like it, too bad. Um, willful ignorance, and
Yeah.
the failure to acknowledge that something is wrong and that something is lacking. It saturates religion, but it's not anything that anybody accepts in any other realm. I've heard religious people make fun of people who believe in Bigfoot. And I'm like, dude, you hear yourself right now? What about your beliefs? I think Bigfoot is a much more plausible option than God. And so I just don't understand the willingness to remain ignorant. Why is that the case in religion, and why is it acceptable? Why is the standard
Right.
so low in religion, yet you would not do that in any other factor of your life? You would not legitimately or give legitimacy to a court system that operated that way, right? I know so and so committed murder. You got to take my word for it. I just know. Oh, okay. Well, must be guilty. No, that's not the way things work. That's just not how things go. And for religion to have a monopoly on morality and wisdom and logic, and not be able to utilize any of those things, and to suppress them in people, is controversial, in my opinion. It's hypocritical. And again, I think religion and education, a religious educational institution, would be an oxymoron, in my opinion.
Well, what's really funny is that, like you said, you went to like a Catholic college. I went to Catholic school, and I got an education, which is weird. And if I hadn't gotten that education, like where I was like, okay, like science makes sense, because it was much easier for me to let go, because I learned some critical thinking skills. It took a
Sure.
while, but I eventually got there, because even growing up, when I tried to believe, I was like, I want to believe. I want to. It wasn't I believe. I want to it. I want it to make sense. I wanted to make it work. But there was always that nagging doubt, in the back of my brain, because I had an education. I wasn't pushed into not thinking different things, because my parents, like, not only did my, like, went to Catholic school, but like my dad and I would watch like Cosmos and Nature,
Yeah.
and they wanted me to have like a broader understanding of the world. And then like they would also let me hang around with, as long as they came from a good family, it didn't really matter what they believed in.
Yep. Yep.
Which once you have, and we traveled a lot. Once you have a broader, like you were talking about traveling, once you have that broader perspective and you're exposed to diverse people, a lot of beliefs you have just start to crack and break.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say that a religious institution that is also an education system is an oxymoron, because it can't be both, right? You can't fully be a religious institution while you're giving people an education. It just doesn't work. Case in point, you got an education and learned to think for yourself. The church defeated its own purpose. It defeated its own purpose by offering an education and offering people a way to think. And this is why traditional church doctrine teaches you not to question things. But unfortunately, for those of us that are curious and inquisitive, that's not going to hold up. It's just not going to hold up, especially if the church ends up telling us to learn things and question things. And I get where you're coming from. I had Muslim families. I had a friend, my best friend, still friends to this day. When I was growing up, his father was Muslim. His mother was raised Christian. The father was from Iran. The mother was from Jamaica. They met in London. I was like, how does this happen? I mean, this is something I've never heard of. And I was allowed to hang out with them. There was no big deal there. I think in a traditional Christian household, that kind of thing probably wouldn't be acceptable. But again, we were just cultural Christians. But yeah, a little bit of exposure goes a long way. And again, I was, just like you were watching the cosmos and having these different experiences while also being Catholic. I had my religious experiences, but then I would learn stories about, like, Noah's Ark, for example. But then my father and my grandfather always had National Geographic on, and I'm like, no fucking way all these animals fit on.
I used to watch National Geographic with my dad too, and my super Catholic brother and I would watch Star Trek all the time together. Like, and I think that when you're exposed, because that information wasn't kept from me, so it made the letting go easier.
Yeah.
Like my religious traumas from messaging as being a queer person and as a woman, like that's my not letting go of belief. It is the messaging that gets fucked around in your brain.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that I had to work through, and I'm going to be working through it all my life.
Yeah, I think
trauma,
the sexual trauma is real. I'm not queer, but I was afraid to lose my virginity for a long time, because I genuinely thought that I was going to burn in hell. I
don't know why that's a thing. But
yeah, me either. But my friends all lost their virginity and started.
8 million people on the planet, and sex is bad. It's like this isn't cute, guys.
Yeah. So my friends were sexually active before I was. And I had big time reservations about it. And then, I eventually was like, well, I gotta fucking do this, and I went away about my way and just became a normal teenager like everybody else. But in my later teens, but the sexual trauma was real, because I had clergy members, and this is so inappropriate, talking to us about the first time they had sex. And I think that's weird, being 12 or 13 in our confirmation class and having a man in his 40s explain that, he didn't have sex with his wife until their wedding night, and that's what you're supposed to do. It's a little weird. Okay. I think that your parents should probably teach you about that. Not a stranger, not some other adult. I would not let my kids be in, unless it was a school where I knew what the curriculum was and what the intent was there. I would not let my children be around other adults teaching them about sex against my will, or like out of place in any way. I just think it's inappropriate. But then again, this is religion.
Well, and this is the thing. This is the difference between sex education, learning about how the sexual reproduction sexual reproduction works.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. Like to have a science teacher tell you that. But like sexual politics, consent,
Yeah.
gender,
Yeah.
like how do you navigate these things? Like my kids have told me, because we live in Florida, that I give them a better sex education than the Florida school
Of
system.
course.
I'm like, yeah, because I'm me.
Yeah.
And also as well is because I wasn't just teaching them like, how baby be made. I was like, this is a negotiation. This is like, and I would say, like, if you're going to engage in adult things, you need to behave like an adult. You
Yeah.
have to take the other person's feelings into consideration. You have to talk about what's okay and what's not okay. The person has to respect you and your choices, and if you want to or not. You can't treat a person like they're an object. And like, and I was teaching them that like 13.
Yeah. 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 It's
I'm that
important.
parent.
No, you have to. You have to.
But I will tell you, when my oldest came to me and told me they were having sex, I was like, I need a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I know. Don't even get me started. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I don't even like.
Oh, just wait. You're that
I don't.
parent.
No. Hey,
You
look,
want to be that parent.
I am realistic, and my daughter is responsible, but we take the responsible route. We treat
Yeah.
we treat sex and emotions and bodily autonomy like or we treat them with the respect that they deserve. And we treat intercourse like the human need that it is. A lot of people pretend that they don't need to do it. And maybe they don't necessarily, but you know what?
These people exist.
Life,
I know.
in your life, you have an innate drive to reproduce and carry on the species. And that's what it is, right? And if you just acknowledge that and treat it like the part of life that it is, I think it just makes it a lot easier. But when you suppress it and you demonize people, right? And you punish people for it, that is, well, where you get religion from. Honestly, I mean, that in itself becomes a religion when there are rules to it, and consequences. It's unfair, and quite frankly, it's inappropriate, especially for kids.
Well, I think also too that, like, this is kind of my perspective. Like, most people, majority of people are not going around hurting, like killing one another. Majority of people are not going around taking each other's stuff. The majority of people aren't essaying people.
Yeah.
Like they're not. But what is everybody doing? They're fucking.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, that's something that can be controlled.
Yeah.
Because it's something that every majority, like ace people are just a small part of the community. I'm not, this is just statistics.
Sure.
Majority of people have a sex drive.
Yep.
And if you can get people to feel shame, if you can get people to feel that they're less than, that their desires are wrong, and also if they give in to like masturbating or whatever, that they're morally bankrupt in some way. Like, and then you have someone in leadership that's telling them that shit. It's like, but then they go home and like, jack off the transport or whatever. It's like, okay, well, like, pick a side, man. Like, are you gonna like and become fucking hypocritical and judge people for their natural desires when you're being a fucking hypocrite? Because that's another thing I don't like. I don't like hypocrites.
No, hypocrites is bad. And that's where you can find them in religion. You can find them in Christianity for sure. I do want to acknowledge the asexual population, actually, because you make a good point. AJ made a good point. I don't mean to disparage asexuals by not bringing them up or acknowledging that maybe they don't have a sex drive. I will say this, though, just like the rest of us, asexuals can be ostracized, right? Can be demonized by poor religious doctrine. By people,
there's something wrong with you if you don't want to have sex and don't want to have babies. Like, well, that's what you're supposed to do, and it's just like, well, like pick a lane. Do you want people to have sex or not?
It's kind of gross. It's
gross. Like, why are you caring what I do in my bedroom?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why do you care?
It's gross. It's inappropriate. It doesn't make sense. It could probably be solved by getting laid once in a while, you know?
There's plenty of people, like, I always say, I'm like, "Somebody needs a stiff drink and a lay."
Yeah, seriously.
I feel like that would solve a lot of your problem. When people are, like, super
Like,
stressed out, I'm like, "You need a stiff drink and a lay, it'll be
just
fine. It will be
give in to
okay.
your urges. There's nothing wrong with it,
There's
right?
nothing
Like,
wrong, it'll be alright."
being drowned, you wanna come up for air. Just come
Yeah,
up for
it'll
air.
be okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, have an orgasm. It reduces your stress. Do that for yourself, people. Like, but
Yes,
like, and I think,
speaking of having orgasm, shout out to Christy Powell.
yeah,
You know,
yes. Hi, Christy.
shout out Christy. I'm doing a show with him in 2 weeks on May 4th. Talk Heathen. Excited.
Yay!
Yeah.
Cool, cool. I love Christy. He good people. It's just very funny because, like, to me, these concepts of, um, religious leadership, kind of, you know, um, holding power they don't deserve, is concerning. And that's putting it mildly. Because you really didn't do anything to deserve being in charge of people,
Yeah.
diverse people,
Yeah.
people that are like, again, like, if you're like a priest, people, and you've never been married, I don't think you should be giving marriage advice. You
Yeah.
haven't swam, like, you've never been. I'm like, like, one, you're not gonna go to, like, training for, like, real marriage counseling by, like, do the actual work. But also, you don't even have firsthand experience.
Yeah.
You've never been married to anybody.
Yep. Yep.
It's weird.
Yeah. There's I mean, I could go on and on about, not only are they not equipped to give that, but they're probably the most ill-equipped to be in that position, right?
Right?
It's not, they're not just bad at it. They're
They're weird.
poorly suited. They're poorly suited. And so, yeah, there really needs to, I think examining religion from a leadership standpoint, since we a lot of times feel as if we want good leaders. We want good leaders if we're athletes on our sports team, right? We want good leaders in politics, right? We elect people to lead and represent us. But then when it comes to religion, we kind of just go with the flow. We don't know where these people come from or who they are. They've got very few skills. They've got no applicable training, and therefore I think they lack credibility. And so I just want people to take the requirements that they hold the rest of society to in every other aspect of their life and transpose that onto religion. And what do you come up with? A failure of religion,
Right.
a failure of leadership, and you're really just in a bad position. So,
Yes. And
that's what I got on that.
exactly. So, I did you want to expand more on this topic? Anything?
I
mean,
think
you can. I'm not in a hurry.
No, I honestly, I think I'm good. I think it was, I think I hit we had a great conversation, and I'm like,
we usually do.
yeah. I'm so thrilled that you invited me on. I don't want to. I'm not
You're gonna
leaving
be
you
back
high.
on. I'll be
I'm
fine.
not leaving you high and dry because I know you got a million other things to do more important than me. I do want to get back to the family.
Yeah.
If
No, I'm like,
if you
it's an hour
feel
and a
that
half.
if you feel that our conversation achieved what you set out for it to achieve, then I'm happy leaving it there.
No, this
and
is great. That's why I let people choose the topic, and I'm like, I'll talk about it with you. I don't care.
yeah, I really appreciate
Just like,
that.
I'm always like, it doesn't, and I always say, like, it doesn't have to be about activism. It doesn't have to be about the circles, but you can talk about whatever you want. It's just that if you're going to talk about like something like sports, let me know, because I know nothing about sport. Don't talk about sports ball, because you'll lose me.
Yeah, I run into that issue too. Like sports is like a language that my dad and my father and my brother-in-law speak really well, and I don't, Like I try to stay in tune so I can kind of communicate, relate a little bit. But they'll be like, "Hey, did you see what happened at the game the other night?" And I'm like, "Well, You hear what China's doing about their tariffs? You know, I'm like so out of the picture. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah,
No, anyway,
so
I
grateful
grew up
I
with
got
5
to
older
talk.
brothers.
Yeah, yeah.
5 older brothers. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about Dungeons and Dragons. We're not talking about video games. We're not talking about music. So what the fuck am I doing? What am I doing here?
That's awesome.
Though I like you are going to come back on. So that's
Yeah,
it's just going to be a thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you would like to be on the show, email me here, or you know someone that would like to be on the show, have them email me here, or you can just DM me. You all know where I am. Follow me on the socials. I am on BlueSky. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram, though I barely check it. And I also have a TikTok that I barely check. I'm bad at the social medias, guys.
You know,
I suck.
When
I suck as a content creator.
I know when it comes to social media, I always have this vision that I'm going to be so involved, and I'm not. And all it is my wife and I just sharing videos back and forth.
Make sure you're sharing your episodes of the nonprofits on your social media. And I did one.
I shared some of you. I shared some of you.
You did. Yeah, I'm like, wow, Jimmy's better at this than I am.
Well, you know, you had a voice, you had something important to say, and it got a lot of views.
I'm terrible.
It was great. Well, I thought you were great. I think you're great.
No, thank you. But like, no, that's my thing. Because I'm always like, I really need to promote the show more. Yeah, I totally should. And then the ADHD is strong, and I get distracted.
Yeah, you got a life. You got a life. You got.
I do. I'm busy.
I want to shout out. I want to shout out Scott, AJ, Eli, Kelly. And all the other great people that were in the chat having a conversation tonight.
I love my people.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you so much, Helen. This was so great. Thank you for letting me talk about something that I believe is really important. I think good leadership is important. And, you know, being a good follower is okay, too. Sometimes you're not a leader, and that's okay. Be a good follower. Be a good
being good followers, calling out the leader's bullshit.
Yeah, there you go. Help the leader be better. But yeah, thank you so much, Helen. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for being here. So, guys, coming up later this week, Cynthia McDonald's going to be here on Thursday.
Yeah.
And Richard Gilliver will be here on Saturday at 4:00 because UK time. But Cynthia will be here at 7 p.m. on Thursday. So there's that.
And Richard at 4 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah, 4 p.m. Eastern because Britain time. So that will be happening Saturday. And Cynthia 7 p.m. on Thursday. Also, I'm trying to think of anything else I want to say. No, that's it. I don't have, that's what's coming up this week. Also, if you want to be on, email, do the email thingy. Other than that, everybody have a wonderful 3 days until I see you again. Give someone a compliment. Stay kind, stay skeptical, and I will see you all on Thursday. Bye, baby. Bye, babies. Bye. Thank you, Jimmy. Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, do you have anything you want to promote before I go?
Hey, you know, everybody, please watch the nonprofits. I know that it's one of the ACA shows, or the ACA show, that probably gets the least amount of viewers. I honestly, genuinely believe that it is the most important when it comes to talking about the issues of our day. So please tune in weeknights. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and watch us have a great discussion.
Yeah. Links in the doobly-doo. So do that. Okay, cool. All right. Bye, everybody.